Good evening and welcome to the program this evening. This program is brought to you by the Election Resource Center, and we're having a discussion about the elections, and we're talking particularly about the biometric voter registration system, something that many of us as Zimbabweans have not yet 100% understood, let alone embraced. So we want to now introduce our panel, who's going to be key in our conversation this evening. And we have a live audience today. We're at Monomtapa Hotel, as I said, organized by the Election Resource Center. They are key where elections are concerned. If you remember some years ago, particularly leading up to the 2013 election, the ERC started a campaign called X1G, and they were targeting first-time voters. Many of us at that time had never had the opportunity to vote in our country, be it because of age or because of destination. And they are still continuing in their work that they do to make sure that Zimbabweans, young and old, participate in elections. And somebody asked me on Twitter today, they said, Ruveneko, you're asking about whether or not we're voters, whether we're registered. So I think this program today is for people such as those that are asking those questions, that are unaware that technically none of us are registered voters, which is why this is such a contentious topic. We want to understand how we're going to participate in an election where we're not technically registered as voters. I'd like to acknowledge the sponsors that have made this event possible today, Davies Events, Mal's Touch, and the Election Resource Center, of course. So now getting into our panel, so you know who's here. Your WhatsApp comments, your Facebook comments, your Twitter comments are welcome throughout the program, so send those through and we will acknowledge them as we discuss elections in Zimbabwe. Anything and everything that you want to discuss about that, do let us know. Okay, so our panel, as I said, is full of secretary generals, party leaders, as well as party deputy presidents. So we're going to get to understand each of their positions, particularly where this system is concerned. As you know, there was a demonstration yesterday, and we're also going to talk about that demonstration because many people were probably driving through the CBD and wondering why there were police officers, riot police and tanks all over the place. But it's because the demonstration happened yesterday, led by Mr. Morgan Trangirai, and he and many opposition party leaders and opposition parties in general got together to challenge this system. So let me start by introducing Mr. Jack Zaba. Mr. Jack Zaba, he represents the Election Resource Center, and he's the program's manager. Mr. Zaba, welcome. Thank you. Can you please tell us a little bit about this dialogue today and the focus?
Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Basically, why we are here is dates back as far as 1980. We've had elections several times, dozens of elections in the country, presidential elections, parliamentary elections, local authority elections. But if you look at the history behind those elections, you will notice that one of the dominant challenges that has characterized our election has to do with the voters' registration. It also has to do with the voters' roll. So since the 90s, the early 2000s, elections in 2005, 2008 and 2013 election. One of the most common problems that we have realized as election stakeholders is the fact that we have a serious problem with our voter registration system. We have a serious problem with the manner in which it is being used by some electoral stakeholders. We've had allegations that the voter registration system itself has benefited a number of political aspirants in terms of them gaining power or retaining power. And even in 2013, you will notice that part of what some observers, those who were allowed to witness the election, they highlighted a big problem with our voters' roll. They highlighted a big problem with the manner in which we do voter registration, notably the African Union, the SADC, which our government really has trust in. So we are here as part of a long discussion that we've had. And I think in 2013 as well, we had one historic moment where we then had a constitution which changed the manner in which voter registration is to happen, which changed the custodian of the voters' roll. Thus, it migrated from the Registrar General, the famous Mr. Tombaya Mdede. Then it went into the hands of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. So I think beginning late 2015, 2016, we've had ZEC, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, giving signals that they want to embark on a new voters' roll. Even our Electoral Act, Section 36A, highlights that we can go for a fresh registration of voters. Subsequent to that, we've had a situation where the Commission now started talking about different ways of doing a new voters' roll. And one of the dominant ways has to do with the biometric voter registration. And following that, we've had a lot of lies, I can say, a lot of misinformation, a lot of distortions around what this animal called BVR is. And I think part of this discussion is for us as Zimbabweans to get an opportunity to teach each other, to get an opportunity to dialogue, and to get an opportunity to find ways on how we can take a new voter registration system going forward. So one of the system, by the way, there are many voter registration systems that can be done. One of them is the current one, which we've been using, but the worldwide, we've had a number of democracies adopting biometric voter registration as a means to enhance transparency, as a means to enhance credibility of the voter registration process. It is also touted as one of the ways to make voter registration easier, accountable, auditable. So this is part of why we are here. And in the ensuing discussions, we've heard that some stakeholders have come with different and varying positions around this new voter registration system. So precisely we are here to dialogue over the new animal that is on our way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zaba, there from the ERC. And then next up we have the leader, President of the Renewal Democratic Party, Mr. Alton Mangoma. He was in the Government of National Unity, the Minister of Energy and Power Development, and he's held various top business posts with local companies. He moved from the MDC-T and joined the MDC renewal team in 2014, and later left to form his own party, RDP, in 2015. His party is part of the code and believes Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, ZEC, is not capable of delivering a free and fair election next year. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening. The issue that has been talked about of elections, this has plagued this country for over a number of years because we have not been able to run credible, free and fair elections. As a result, talks of rigging and other things have been flying around. And for 2018, we want to have a credible, free and fair election. Now, when you look back and you say what has been wrong with our election process, you find that there are three central issues that have made our elections not acceptable. The first one has been the use of violence and coercion, which ZANU-PF continuously perpetrates. And therefore, you can expand that and say it then involves people being assisted to vote. And in 2013 alone, you'll know that close to over 9% of the people were forced to be assisted to vote. So this becomes one of the key issues. The second issue has been what we call captured institutions. And captured institutions include ZEC, includes the Registrar General and other institutions who do their bidding for ZANU-PF as opposed to the ordinary Zimbabweans. And this is what has caused some of the demonstrations that have been there and the calls for ZEC to be disbanded and to have someone else carry out the elections in Zimbabwe, so that there is someone who is trusted by all parties so that the outcome of that election can be accepted. And the third one has been the voters' roll. And the voters' roll has been used as an instrument of making sure that there is what we call systematic rigging. and blatant rigging. And I can talk about the systematic rigging first through the voters' roll. And this is where people are excluded from the voters' roll. Deliberately, either the process is slowed down to such an extent that people, potential voters are frustrated and they go away. And in 2013, ZESNI itself showed that nearly 1 million potential voters were excluded. It also shows that the bulk of the young people were left out without being registered to vote. So that's the first one. The second, where it is used, is really when someone has been already registered. There is what we call voter scattering. You register in Chiundura and your name is put in Victoria Falls. So when you go, you don't find your name there, but you actually registered. And we know all these things. And the third and very subtle way that it is also used was that you go, you have registered, your name is on the, in the voters' roll, but actually when you present yourself, they tell you you are not registered at all. And you are turned away. And I say this because it happened to two very close relatives of mine. The first one being my son. He was turned away, but when the niece followed him, actually said, this one you have turned him away, but the name is above mine. That's how he then managed to be called back. The other one was actually told he's not registered in Kwadzana. But he says, I'm registered. He says, if you have got, if you want clarification, go to the command center. So he went to the command center, was told you are registered on page so-and-so, line number so-and-so, went back, and then was allowed then to vote, and they say, oh, sorry, we made a mistake. And I say, two very close people, it's more than a coincidence. Now, as a result of this, and that ZEC is a captured institution, we do not believe that ZEC can in any way prepare any voters' roll that will pass the test that we want. Whether it is the current one, manual one, or whether it is BVR. And therefore, that's why we call for people to vote with their IDs. And now, why do we call for people to vote with their IDs? This is one unique country where most of the citizens actually have got an identity document. In other countries, they don't have it. If you go to Zambia, they don't have identity documents as we have. So we already know who is a citizen and who is not a citizen. And the Constitution gives the right to all citizens to be able to vote. And when we without the disenfranchisement, you will find that it becomes a lot easier. Now we can go to the BVR itself and say, having looked at it and say it's a very narrow sense, why is BVR not the right thing to go for? The first thing is that the passwords are controlled by ZEC, who is ZANU-PF. The override, good luck Jonathan, who was president of Nigeria, they failed to recognize him on voting day and an override to be done. We are all, even if we want to appear to be technically savvy, we are not technically savvy. And when you go to the rural areas and you are faced with a machine that says you can't vote, that's the end of the story. Whereas when there is my ID, I should be able to register and vote, and I will be able to come back to say, how do you vote using your ID? I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mangoma. I'm just going to reiterate to our panel as well. We've had 2 introductions and we want to go through all of you, but if we could just keep it to 2 minutes, that would be favorable, so that we can also get into our discussion, because the Q&A, I have 10,000 questions for both of you based on what you just said in the introduction, particularly around what the BVR system is. And it's interesting, I think we all have different interpretations of it. Interestingly enough, Mr. Mangoma thinks that the biometric voter registration is got to do with biometric voting. right? When you say that if you take it to the rural areas and then you're not asked to vote and you're faced with machines, but we'll get into that debate. We'll get into it. I just think it's important for us to clarify exactly what ZEC has described this to be. I'll read out verbatim what Mrs. Rita Makarau said, Justice Rita Makarau. I'll go into that. But now I'd like to hand over to another representative. He is from the PDP. And he's the spokesperson of the party, Mr. Jacob Mafume. He is a lawyer by profession. Unfortunately, lost the Harare seat in 2013 and expelled from MDCT in 2014. PDP is one of the political parties in the Coalition of Democrats Again Code, similar to Mr. Mangoma's party. And Mr. Mafume is now going to let us know his thoughts, in particular around elections in 2018 and the BVR.
Thank you, Ruveneko. I think that seat was rigged.
Just like the elections are going to be rigged next year,
like
right?
The elections were remember, we wanted to have a president and so forth and so forth. But here we are discussing the next elections.
Which is
but
important.
Thank you for the flattering introduction. Quite complimentary. Basically, I think, look, my friend here has gone to the extreme end of things. We, as the People's Democratic Party, we believe in thought leadership and so forth. So we are not exactly against technology. So we wouldn't sit here and be able to say that we don't want to use the latest systems that are being used the world over. We don't want to see a computer anywhere near Zimbabwe's voting system. We are worried that there will be databases and so forth and so forth. I think as the People's Democratic Party, we are not worried about technology. We believe that technology, if used properly, would probably enhance the quality of life and the quality of voting. So make no doubt about it. We are not against technology, and it will be very remiss for me to say that we are scared of computers and the biometric data being stored somewhere. We are not. And our understanding of the biometric system is that we've already got a biometric identity card, we've already got a biometric passport. It's just about the collection of your biological data, whether it's a fingerprint, your face, your iris, and so forth. So there's nothing sinister per se about it. Zimbabweans interact with biometric collection systems on a daily basis, right from their national ID to their passport and many other issues. So we've got to be clear, because sometimes our own description of things make people afraid of them without them being so scary. The issue we do have is that, one, we have lost faith in the people manning the system. So we have lost faith in ZEC, Rita Makarau, and here other sidekicks. Is it Sly Guana and so forth? The guys who came from the military junta into the election system. We have lost faith in them. We have lost faith in this government when it says it wants to procure the BVR kits. Because, you know, this government has procured the third roads, and the third roads all look like they have smallpox. It's the only country with roads that might need a vaccination, because they've got holes everywhere. So we have problems when the State Procurement Board says that they want to procure anything, because they've so far not procured anything useful to Zimbabweans. Even the bond notes that they procure for themselves are not working as they should be working. So that's where we have a problem. We have a problem with the people who man the system. They are not entirely independent. They will not implement it correctly. It will be implemented late and so forth. So the message to our colleagues in as far as elections are concerned is, whether we are doing BVR, whether we are doing a manual voters roll, whether we are doing something, what's important for the people of Zimbabwe is that we've got to win. We've got to win the next election, 2018, whatever system we use to have that election. We might be late in implementing the BVR, we might remain with this manual of voters roll. But what we need to think about is, how do democratic forces, how do we create an environment that it is winnable? So that's what I'll say
In short.
in short.
Thank you very much, sir, for that. Thank you. As you know, we're live, and we don't like any kind of obstructions or any problems. I think when I announced the rules before we went live, it was for this purpose that we don't have to interrupt our proceedings. This gentleman in front of me, sorry, sir, with your cell phone. Sorry, sir. We had asked that we don't record any videos, and I believe you are. So if you could please stop that so we can continue with our process. While the world waits for you. Are we good? Thank you. Please, can we not have any problems? Welcome to take pictures, but we're streaming where we're streaming. You are in here live, so enjoy the process and let's not have any more problems. Thank you. Okay, moving on with our panel now as we continue and introduce all our guests. We're going to hear from the spokesperson of the National People's Party. His name is Jealousy Mawadire. He's a journalist by profession, so he's a comrade to me. And he worked for the Zimbabwe Electoral Support Network as a research officer. So he's not new to elections. He also filed a case with the Concourt challenging President Mugabe to set dates for presidential and parliamentary elections by 29 June, arguing that the principles of the GNU risk violating the Constitution. That was back then. I believe that obviously we know that you are now, this is a very brand new party, right? And we're curious to know so much more. So on another platform, we're going to find out more about this new party and your leader. But for today, sir, if you could please let us know your thoughts on the BVR system.
I think you don't need any introduction for my leader.
Sorry, I think, are you on? Okay.
She has been around for a long time. But let's talk about the biometric voters roll. I think that's why we're here. And I would like to address the question, why should we have a BVR? Why should we register anew when it comes to May? Because, as you were saying, technically all of us are not registered to vote, because registration is going to start for all of us in May. And the good thing about having a new voters roll is that we had a voters roll that had quite a lot of anomalies. I would take you to the voters roll that was used in 2008. We had about 5,362 children on that voters roll, and 93 of those were less than 4 years. And technically in Zimbabwe, we don't have automatic voter registration. And you wonder where they were coming from. Also, we had about 17,475 people who were 107 years old. It was the same age. 17,475 is not a small number. So we have a voters roll that really needs to be done away with. And if you look at the figures that ZEC is throwing now, they are saying that they are projecting to register about 5.5 million people through the BVR. But in the last election, we had 6.6 million registered voters. So there's a difference of 1.1 million that they're not anticipating to register. Are they real people? Are they dead? Why are they not projecting to register 6.6 million? I think they know something. They know that technically we have not more than 5.5 million people. I've also heard arguments that it's no longer possible to register people anew if we are going to have an election next year. But the election that we're going to have next year will be around July, September. So we have more than 16 months to that election. And we have ample time, because what we are doing now, we are not inventing the wheel. Zambia did that in 2011 with a budget of 25 million. In 186 days, they registered 5.1 million people. And they were using 6,437 centers to register. But I'm told by ZEC that they are going to use 9,735 polling centers to register people, because they are going to use all the polling stations that they used in the 2013 election as registration centers. So if I make my calculations well, if you need to register 5.5 million people, or using 9,700 polling stations, it would take you about 113 days, which is less than 4 months to complete that registration exercise. So technically, time-wise, it's possible. We can register people from May until September. We are done. Thank you for now.
Thank you very much, sir. Moving on, next on our panel, we have the Deputy President of the MDC. His name is Edwin Mushoriwa. He is the former legislator for Harare's Divarasekwa constituency and the former MDC spokesperson. Mr. Mushoriwa, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening. We believe that the current challenges Zimbabwe is facing are all related to the elections that we have had in this country. The current government suffers from the question of legitimacy. They are there, but you will know that as far back as 2000, all the elections that we have held, they have always been contested. And there is no doubt that the elections in this country has been rigged. The unfortunate part in this country that whereas even the previous elections where the RRG, the office doing the voters' roll, the new constitution now says the ZEC is supposed to do the voters' roll and is supposed to be in charge of running the elections. And I share the same view with the other panelists here who say that we have actually lost confidence in the ability of ZEC to run and administer the elections. ZEC is supposed to be an independent board. And the events which has happened even in the past few days where the whole chairperson of ZEC could simply turn around and run away from the political players in this country just tells you that ZEC is a captured institution. Now, the challenge we have, there's no problem in terms of having a BVR system in a country. But there are two things that are very pertinent, especially when we look into a country like Zimbabwe. The first issue is that BVR operates in an environment generally which does not have a history of intimidation and violence. And BVR as well operates in a system where there is enough time to prepare for it. I'll tell you in terms of time, my colleague here says it is very possible for us to do the BVR registration in the next 4 months. I beg to differ. As we speak right now, we haven't even procured the kits. We haven't even gone to the testing, the pilot tests. We haven't even trained the personnel to do the job. We haven't done anything. And to make matters worse, we have said to UNDP, we don't want your man, as if we have man in this country when we don't have. Then, if we do the BVR, look at it from a ZANU-PF culture of violence. It is known that intimidation and violence have actually been the weapon which ZANU-PF has actually made them retain power. If you are going to have BVR registration, where you have all your rural areas, Marsh East, Matebele North, there, you ask all the people that you are now going to be taking your picture, your fingerprints, 2 months or 3 months towards an election. Just imagine the traditional leaders with the ZANU-PF whip behind them, telling the people that now, next time you go to vote, it will be easier to pinpoint. So intimidation is going to work to their advantage. Our view is to simply say, in as much as we want to go to BVR, which is the desired destination, but I think in the current scenario, what we may need to do because of the time that we don't have, we may need to possibly move from the manual voter registration and probably go to what we call EVR, which is the electronic voter registration. What it does, It allows the ZEC or whoever is going to be running the elections to go out there, register voters anew on all the polling stations that we are going to use for the 2018 elections without necessarily going the BVR. And I think the BVR, we can then start to implement it for the 2023 elections, post the 2018, so that we give this country time to build that BVR and also get the buy-in from all the stakeholders.
Thank you, sir. Now we move on to our final panelist for the evening. And he is going to be giving us his views. I don't know if they're going to be similar or if they're going to start challenging, but we'll hear from him. Mr. Douglas Monzora, Secretary General of the MDCT. He's also a lawyer by profession, so we have a number of those. And he's part of the negotiating team for his party during the formation of the GNU. And he was also the COPAC co-chair. And he lost his parliamentary seat in Nyanga as well in 2013 to ZANU-PF. And he rose from being the party spokesperson to being the party's SG in 2014. And he's also the NERA spokesperson of the political party's platform. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ruve. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to thank the ERC for this wonderful event and invitation. I want to thank those who have spoken before me, President Mangoma, spokesperson, Jacob, spokesperson, Jealousy, and then Vice President Shoriwa, and my friend, you know his name. The crisis in Zimbabwe is threefold. It is the crisis of governance, the crisis of the economy, and the crisis of legitimacy. The crisis of legitimacy comes because we have never had leaders that we actually had chosen. We have never had free and fair elections. So the issue of free and fair elections addresses, in our view, the crisis of legitimacy. Our leaders complain a lot that when they go outside the country, they are not treated with respect. The investment that they try to get into the country doesn't come. They complain a lot about that. And they blame it on something else. But the most important thing is because there is a crisis of legitimacy. So for us to have a free and fair elections, what electoral system must we have? We must have an electoral system that guarantees three things: the secrecy of the vote, the security of the vote, and the security of the voter. This brings me to the issue of the voter registration system. The BVR system has been a demand of the MDC since its formation. And it was a demand of the MDC before the historic first split that saw us parting ways with my good colleague here. It was also a demand of the MDC on the second split when we part ways with my Sekuru Mangoma there. And it was a demand of the MDC when I succeeded President Biti now as Secretary General of the MDC. It has been a demand of the MDC. And why has the MDC united, and when it split again, why was it consistent on the biometric voter registration system? Because number one, the biometric voter registration system creates a new voter registration system. It therefore means by having a biometric voter registration system, we will have a new voters roll. That's the fastest way of getting away from this Mudede voters roll. So that's our attraction number one. Attraction number two, using the biometric voter registration system, it means the dead voters don't appear on the voters roll. The dead voters won't be able to be taken photographs, fingerprints, and so on. So the dead voters won't vote. Attraction number two. Attraction number three is that the voter registration slips that were used to cheat the 2013 elections will be done away with. But let me hasten to say that a biometric voter registration system cannot eliminate all the electoral malpractices. For example, it can't get rid of intimidation. It can't get rid of unfairness. It can't get rid of the abuse of state resources by the ruling party. These are attitude issues. But a biometric voter registration system is important. The topic and the disagreement in the country right now is the decision by government to take over the procurement of the BVR kits. Our agreement in the political parties ZEC platform was that there will be biometric voter registration. The kits will be procured by ZEC via the UNDP. And everything was done up to the time when those who applied were listed. And when they shortlisted, I think the three, the government came in and said, we want to take over. Now we are saying that the government is breaching a contract that it had with the UNDP, that it had with other political parties, and that it had with ZEC. We are not against the government funding the procurement. We are against the government taking over the procurement, because that way the government want to give this contract to its friends. It wants to give it to Nikov. And we are saying that that must be resisted. And that is where the fight is right now. By the biometric voters' role is a necessity in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, we are now opening our discussion. I think we are ready, and the ground has been set by our panel today, and we're focusing particularly on the points that they have touched on, which are the concerns we have around elections going into 2018, the concerns they have around the voting registration process and the voting itself. They talked a lot about election season. There seems to be a lot of consistency around intimidation, consistency around the concern of procurement of this system, this BVR system. And as we know, background is that there was a bid put out for tender. There were 12 companies that applied, and rightly so, as it has been alluded to, that there was a shortlist, and we have now arrived where we are today. Whether or not government is handing those over to friends, in quotation marks, we can't be sure. But what we do know is that we need to understand what this BVR is today, and we need to challenge it as citizens and make sure that those that are handling this process are well aware of our opinions of it and how we'll embrace it. Some might be wondering why ZEC is not present on this platform. I was wondering myself until today. I was hoping that a miracle was going to happen. But if you have followed the press, we know that yesterday in the march, there was a bit of a situation, which I'll ask maybe one of the panelists to tell us exactly what happened when Justice Makarau walked out of that discussion. But we also want to acknowledge that ZEC made it clear that they would not participate in this conversation today, or any conversation around the BVR until they're ready, because they feel that the opposition parties that are challenging the BVR system are making it a bit personal and not necessarily focusing on the issues at hand. So they did not feel that being part of this panel would benefit either the citizen or the BVR system itself. Some might be asking why we don't have a representative from the ruling party tonight, right? This was not by design. I believe the ERC does its due diligence. This platform could have had up to 30 people. But I know that the ruling party in particular was contacted, and efforts were fruitless to get someone to speak. One of the comments that came back from one that was invited was such that they feel that because ZEC has made their position clear on the BVR system, there's no need to deliberate it further. So we'll allow that. Everyone is entitled, and those that are here tonight will lead our discussion. So now, those of you that are in the audience today, please get ready with your questions, because I will be coming to you in just a moment. I'm going to just go to the panel now and just touch on some of the areas that they touched on. And I must also emphasize that Justice Rita Makarau did say that the BVR system is a biometric voter registration system. It is not a voting system. The voting that we all know will probably continue as we've always known it. This is just to re-register all of us as citizens in a way that is above board, so we can participate in the elections next year. So let me come to some comments that came through. I want to start with obviously these comments were personal to party opinion, which is fine. But one of the comments that came in, Mr. Mshoriwa, right? It sounds as though you have absolutely no faith in the system at all. And you repeated that there's no efforts to make this BVR productive. You said there's no training, you don't like the procurement process, there's no budget for it, we've turned away the UN. And my question for you, sir, is, are you aware of the total budget of this procurement system? I've read figures, but I just wanted to know from you what it is that you feel we're not ready for. And I've also read and understood that ZEC is making efforts to send their officials to countries where they have BVR to make sure they get the training that they need. Why are you so against it? And why do you feel that those in charge are not doing the due diligence to make sure it works out?
Let's start from 2013 elections. And you know what happened during the registration. It's always the system of ZEC and ZANU-PF to wait until the last minute and then create chaos. And they normally benefit from that chaos. In actual fact, they use the 3D system where they delay, then deceive the people, and then destroy the aspirations of Zimbabweans. What we do know for a fact is this. If we are talking of around, if the procurement is going to cost, let's say around $30 million.
It's 50 million, I believe.
Yes, it's going to cost, let's say $30 million, which Chinamasa said they possibly could actually raise. We do know that we don't have that funding at the moment. Our pace, the fiscus is actually empty. That's the first thing. The second part, the drama that the chairperson of ZEC did 2 days ago is just a well-orchestrated move. It's a question of making sure that they will delay and continue to delay. As we speak right now, if you were to hear what ZANU-PF has been doing across the country, they've been literally moving around, registering people in an intimidatory manner, even before ZEC has actually come into play. What we fear is that at the very last minute, ZANU-PF and ZEC will just announce that no, we have actually failed with this BVR. This is the reason why we feel that BVR is very good, it's important, just like my Secretary General here was saying, we believe that BVR is the ideal destination. But before we reach that destination, let's make sure that we achieve the various milestones and signposts along the way. And
so you agree with the BVR system, but you don't feel we're ready, and you don't like the fact that ZEC is running this process?
Yes, it's like somebody who wants rice and chicken, but doesn't believe that this person who is going to cook that food has got the capacity to cook.
All right. I heard, sir, heard. Okay, so let's come back to those that don't like the chef. Okay, let's say we don't like the chef. Let's come back to those that alluded to that. And this was obviously a consensus, as we said yesterday in the demonstration that was had. And I want to come to you, Mr. Mangoma. You talked about the lack of credible elections and lack of. You called ZEC a captured institution, right? And you said that ZEC is bidding for ZANU-PF. You also said that the voters' roll is an instrument for systematic rigging, and that ZEC is a ZANU-PF agent. I would like you to validate these claims.
Thank you.
In light of disliking the chef.
Thank you. I want, before I answer that, for you to change the name of our party. It's not RDP, it's RDZ, Renewal Democrats of Zimbabwe.
Sure.
Right. Everyone here has agreed that ZEC is not the right, or is not trusted. That's
Everyone
what,
here agrees.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. They've said that.
Okay, when you say everyone, we've got a room full of people.
No, I'm saying
you know?
panelists.
Okay, the panel, is that correct?
Four
the panel,
of the
all
5
don't
panelists
agree.
have actually agreed, and part
Mr.
of the
Zaba,
demonstration.
ERC?
No, I'm excluding.
You're excluding him.
Yeah, the demonstration yesterday and the demands are clearly we don't like ZEC. We don't trust that they are an arbiter who can deliver credible, free and fair elections. So that's already accepted.
Is that because you've never won?
No.
Or because you have actual valid claims?
We've actually
to
won.
say
We've
that
got valid claims.
Okay, we're not.
I've already told you why, but I will explain again. The issue about ZEC is that there are things that are already as part of our law that I have said if they wanted to show that they are they can play it fair, they would be able to do. And I go through them. The first one is really giving guidelines to make sure that the state media cover all political parties fairly. This is contained in our law, and they have failed to do that consistently. Two, when it has come
And
to...
do you believe that ZEC is in control of that?
Yes, it
entirely?
is.
You do.
They are given that responsibility. So
It is a requirement.
It
But
is
when
a
it comes to
requirement.
execution,
Yes.
let's be very frank, there's one state media broadcaster.
No, but
So
that
do you
one
feel
stop-
that
ZEC must give the guidelines.
They do.
When they are not followed, then we talk about them not being followed. That's what an independent institution does.
Okay.
You don't wait to be given the green light by someone else. So that is very clearly them failing to do what an independent arbiter must do. So they failed there. The second is that we ask your staff members, please give us who they are, so that we are satisfied that they are not CIOs. Because we know they are CIOs, that's why they keep them secret. We have talked about it, and that is correct. So if ZEC says they are not, let's see them and their backgrounds. And in fact, one of them is actually a distant relation of mine, and I know they are a CIO. So if I am challenged, I will be able to produce the name and the credentials.
Well, we're challenging you, sir.
No, not yet. I will not say the name. I'm saying, I'm challenging ZEC
Sure.
to say one of them is a distant relation of mine, right? So we know that. There is also, when you actually look and say, in its operations, ZEC, and that's why even ZANU-PF is not here, because they know ZEC does its own bidding. Because if ZEC was not doing the bidding for ZANU-PF, ZANU-PF would have come here.
I don't think you can speak for ZANU-PF, sir.
I'm saying...
With respect.
I'm not speaking for them. I'm drawing a conclusion.
It's an assumption and it's an accusation.
Yes, it is. And that's what it is. And that's what it is. And what these people want, when we talk about transparency, is those things must be talked about and the air cleared. Because if you fail to clear the air, then we must carry on with our suspicions. And in this case, we actually have got some proof, as I have already said, because they are failing to do it. There are things that we have demanded that don't require, we have asked that the procurement of ballot papers, we must be involved. There is no law that stops it, but they don't. Even this distribution, they keep it a secret. The procurement of the ink is something that we should all be involved and be happy that this ink is not washable, but they don't. So it's very basic things that test whether you are working for someone else or you have nothing to hide. If they have nothing to hide, we will all know where the ballot papers are printed, how many, how they are distributed. All the countries in SADC do it.
Can I ask something that's quite important, I think, in light of the demonstration and the comments that came on the platform today? Are you all going to participate in the election next year if things continue the way that they are? Because you've raised concerns, like you've just said. You don't know about the procurement process. We just want to know that when we go and vote, are your names going to be on the ballot paper?
Thank you. I can speak for our party and possibly for CORD. What our position is that we will enter into unfree and unfair elections, if need be. But we will show that we are going in under protest. There will be no point that we'll be able to say we are happy with them.
So you'll still eat the rice and chicken?
We will, because we are hungry, we will eat the badly cooked rice and chicken.
Right.
But we will say to the chef, please, this is not good. So if I have a tummy ache at the end, people will know that before he ate, he complained about the bad cook. So that's what we must do.
Okay, so you're
certainly for
preparing.
us.
Okay, let me
So
not even.
if
go
you
there.
want to know,
Sorry,
we are
please.
not boycotting, in case you
You're
wanted to find out.
participating. Is
We
that
are
a
not boycotting,
consensus?
but neither are we going to say something is right when it is blatantly wrong.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to take that microphone from you now. Thank you. I'd like to come to the rest of our panel just to confirm. I mean, it is a very important question, but are you all going to participate in this election under these conditions? Because for a protest to happen and for all these technicalities to be coming up, does this mean that you're going to, pull out? Or is it still going on?
We are not going to eat the rice and chicken and die, but we are going to ensure that as we go forward from now, by the time we have elections, maybe in 16 months, a lot of things would have changed, starting with a new register. That's why we are saying, let's go the BVR way, let's get a new register and see what we can. We have to demand and get some concessions from the ruling party. And also, we are working on a broad coalition. And once we have a coalition, it also makes it very difficult for people to rig an election where the turnout is above 84%.
So is there going to be a coalition?
I'm saying we are working on a coalition.
Who's
and one
we?
of the my party and all the other parties that are represented here.
Because
we
I
are
mean, I
working
looked
on
at the images from yesterday, and they were quite, I mean, if we talk about history books, they were quite profound, riding in the back of a truck and, the leaders there and, speaking to audiences. And, for me, I said to myself, is this the beginning of a grand coalition? And I wouldn't mind an answer to that, would you?
It's not the beginning. It's actually follow-up to quite a lot of work that we have been doing. It's only that people have been blind to what...
No, I don't think people have been blind. I mean, we all read the press.
Maybe
There's
the
questions
media,
all the
maybe
time.
you guys in the media have been blind to what we have been doing, but we have been working.
Please don't forget you're also part of the Fourth Estate.
But I'm not, I'm a politician. I'm a politician. I'm not part of the
but
media.
how you're answering is as answering as a politician. My question was very straightforward.
Yeah.
And I would like to know
and I
that
thought
when we
as
go
well,
to
my
elections-
answer was very straightforward,
Yes.
that it was not the beginning.
It is
but
happening.
it's ongoing. It's an ongoing process. We've
Right.
been doing quite a lot of work
Right.
behind the scenes. It's not everything that we do and we publicize in the media, but we've been working very hard to ensure that we build a coalition. And a coalition would make it very difficult for ZANU-PF to rig the next election. It's going to be very difficult if we get a turnout, which will be around 84%. For ZANU-PF to rig. If they have a discrepancy of more than 1 million votes, it's going to take them even more than 365 days to stuff ballots in ballot boxes. So what we are doing is we are ensuring that the process that we are undertaking now, the process of building confidence in our people, and even the BVR, it builds confidence in our people. It also, where it has been implemented in Zambia, it ensured that there were about 24.5% new voters that were registered in 2011 in Zambia. And the voter turnout was phenomenal. It was around 84%. And that makes rigging an election very difficult.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to come to you, Mr. Mafume. You touched on a number of aspects as well, but primarily your concerns were around your losing faith and hope in ZEC, and you called Justice Makarau and her sidekicks up to something, You talked about how, the procurement of the kits is not above board. You talked about our roads having smallpox, right? Fair and fine. My question to you still begins on this coalition, because you've definitely got our attention with this one. I'd like to hear from you, Mr. Mafume, if you could also confirm or deny that perhaps in 2018 there will be a grand coalition amongst all of you.
Yeah, well, there has to be. It's a must. There will be a coalition. We have already got a coalition in CORD, which a number of the parties here have signed. There's already a coalition in NERA, which participated and created the activities that we are talking about. So you can see that people are working towards a coalition in one form or the other. What people need to clarify is what the next coalitions will need to do besides conducting demonstrations together and so forth. So we have recognized, and we have said it from the start, that we need a great coalition. The people want it. It is a necessity, and we cannot defeat ZANU-PF in our separate corners. We need to be united. And therefore, we are working towards that. The mechanics might be difficult. There might be a few disagreements here and there. But events such as yesterday, they bring a warm feeling to the heart. They create a sense of hope. And they also show a sense of purpose in people. We will work around the variables of how we will then create an electoral coalition. Because that is what matters. An electoral coalition that is able to field candidates in a united manner and then be able to overwhelmingly defeat ZANU-PF, because defeat ZANU-PF, we've done it before, but without being overwhelming, they simply recount the figures.
Thank you. I want to come to Mr. Monzora here. I want to ask you about this process toward election. Oftentimes as citizens, we know for a fact that give it maybe 12 to 18 months before election, and every single party is going to be making noise. There's going to be this sudden interest in election registration and all these adverts and all this energy, yet you've had 5 years in between. Not to say you've not been doing anything, don't get me wrong, you have been. But suddenly the pressure hots up just before elections are about to happen. Then you want to come back and blame ZEC and say that ZEC is not ready, ZEC is not organized, ZEC hasn't raised the money. But as political parties, should you not be focused on getting the citizens and the electorate excited about elections, as opposed to now, 12 months before elections, biometric, I feel like the priority is a little bit warped, and I'd like to know why 12 months before there's so much pressure.
Well, unfortunately, I have to speak for my party.
Fortunately, it's fine.
Yes.
Thanks.
I wish I was going to speak for others as well, because this is a national platform, and I would really love to speak on behalf of others. But speaking for the MDC, the last election was in 2013, and in 2014, the MDC held its Congress. And at its Congress, it established 3 important things. The first one was the electoral roadmap. From 2014 to 2018. That establishment of an electoral roadmap is preparation for elections. It's not waiting for 2018. It was done in 2014. Number 2, the MDC came up with a list of demands for electoral reforms and went on to craft a document. First, the document was called Without Reforms, No Elections, which was a document which codified all those reforms that were supposed to be done to make sure that we have an even playing field. After that, the MDC, together with other political parties, 13 political parties, established the National Electoral Reform Agenda in 2015. Again, this was a bigger group calling for electoral reforms. The MDC right now has already started asking people on what they would want to see in a new Zimbabwe. Our President Tsvangirai, has been having meetings with the traditional leaders throughout the country. In my constituency alone, Nyanga alone, he had a meeting with 31 village heads. That is called preparing for elections. Making these noises now about an election that is about to be stolen is preparing for elections. Now, I want to answer the question, is ZEC compromised? And my answer is yes. ZEC is created in terms of the Constitution. It must make sure that elections are free and fair. It must deal with all election malpractices. Now let's go to by-election number 1. I'm going to pick 3. By-election number 1, Hurungwe. The village heads in Hurungwe and the ZANU-PF militia terrorized the people. And the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission actually produced an adverse report. ZEC said nothing. Food was given only to ZANU-PF people, and also people were not given food as a reprisal for not campaigning for ZANU-PF. ZEC said nothing. In Norton, 5,000 stands were offered to people who would vote for ZANU-PF. That is first-class vote buying. ZEC said nothing about it.
All right. I'm going to just interject there, sir. Sorry, sir, not to be rude. Please allow. Because we don't have much time, we've already about clocked 1 hour. We haven't even come to our audience yet. And I know that asking that question was very risky of me because I had a feeling it would have been answered like that, with every party defending what it is they've done over the past 5 years. And as I said, I'm not saying you have done nothing. I'm just noticing that the pressure has hotted up, and now here we are on a panel, now dissecting how registration is going to happen. Why now?
I was just going to say about ZEC. If it quacks like a duck, swims like a duck, flies like a duck, then it is a duck. Then it is ZANU-PF. That's all I'm saying.
Sorry, the duck is ZANU-PF?
Yes.
For the purpose of this panel, I do wish there was a ZANU-PF representative, but nothing can be done regarding that. So we're going to come to questions from the audience. I believe we have some, so I'm going to need to come to those. I don't know how this is being managed, but we're not handing over microphones to the audience, I believe. We are. Okay. Let's hear from you then.
Thank you.
Please just introduce yourself
My name
you
is
start.
Pride Mkono. I'm an ordinary citizen. I think I have one question and then just a brief contribution. The question I have is directed to Mr. Mafume and Mr. Monzor. Because one of the gaps that I've already realized that there's a lot of misinformation about the BVR process. And from what we are gathering, I want to know that should we then take that route of the BVR? The misinformation is already being done on the ground. Do you have the capacity? What capacity exists within the respective political parties you come from to counter the narrative that has been set on the ground with regards to the misinformation, like we'll see you on a television set, we have voted for, we'll follow you when you've done that. And then my brief contribution is that ZEC also creates red herrings, deliberately so. I would quote from their own statement, ahead of the June 10 June 2015 by-elections, they claimed that 400,000 new voters had been registered in the constituencies I think there were 16 constituencies that they're going to do the elections. So the challenge is, how do we hold them accountable for that? Because the turnout was less than 40,000 in all the 16 constituencies. After 400,000 people have registered, it doesn't make sense. So how do you hold ZEC accountable? Probably that's the other issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think it was directed. Please do address.
Yes. Thank you very much for that question. I think that, like what Ruveneko was at pains to explain, there is biometric voter registration, and then there is voting. So there has not been an indication that the voting itself will be biometric. So what will happen at the polling station is that you will have a voter's roll that has a picture of a person or something, pictures, and contains some of the biodata that you have, and you will identify it. So sometimes, or what has been said, is that the voting will probably happen the same way that it has happened before. But the data that is then reflected on the voter's roll is far much more than just your name, your ID, and address. You then have your picture. So in many ways, like the SG has said, we in the opposition have championed the need of having a biometric voter's roll. We know the advantages. We've seen them in Ghana, we've seen them in Zambia, we've seen them in Kenya, and we've seen them in Nigeria. So sometimes, even where it is not implemented perfectly, for nothing can be implemented perfectly, it has democratic dividends. So we need the democratic dividend that will be provided by the biometric voters roll system, registration system. And that is why we championed it for so many years. And you can see that is why the Herald has gotten up to what we are saying. The Herald all of a sudden has started saying it doesn't want biometric voter registration because they know and they see what has happened in other countries. And that can then happen. But we do have the capacity to educate our people. We have had the capacity to tell people that ZANU-PF is bad for so many years, and they've done that. So we have the capacity to educate them on the BVR system once it's in place.
Thank you very much. I think we'll move on for the purpose of progress. We're going to take a few hands, hear some questions, and then answer them at once. Okay, so can I just see the hands we're going to address and then address those? 1, 2, 3, 4 hands. Charmaine, if you could just note those 4 hands, and then we'll take the answers at once. So please go ahead. So introduce yourself and your question.
Thank you very much. My name is Simbarashem Kore from Zimripaki. My question has been provoked by a lamentation that has emanated from the panelists today, that they do not have confidence in ZEC, in the people who are manning the system, and that ZEC is a captured institution. The question is, who is to blame for having ZEC as a captured institution? Because to the best of my knowledge, back in 2013, the people of Zimbabwe voted for a constitution that gave the president executive powers to appoint anyone who matters in the politics of this nation, including Lita Makarau and his commissioners, who serve at the pleasure of the president. So for those who are calling for the disbandling of these people, the commissioners, including Rita Makarau, who is then going to appoint these same people? It is the president. So how are we going to deal with this situation? Because it is a problem that is now in the constitution, that the president has the powers to appoint anyone who matters, and obviously he will not appoint anyone who defy his orders. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next question.
My name is Dominic. There's been quite a bit of talk about lack of confidence in the system. And a lot of political parties are already talking about the fact that elections are going to be rigged. How are you going to ensure that there is high voter turnout that you spoke about when you're already discouraging people from coming to vote and by saying that it's going to be rigged? So what incentive do I have as a citizen to want to come or listen to you to come and register to vote when you yourselves are saying that it's already a rigged game?
Thank you very much, sir.
My name is Williams Madzimure. My question is, considering that Rita Makarau is eyeing the position of the Chief Justice, and she's also secretary to the Judicial Commission, do you think she will compromise her chances by standing up against the appointing authority? That's one. The second question is, Kudabashe Basket is withdrawn from the Mwenezi by-election, and ZEC has said nothing. Do you think ZEC is not aware of what is happening in Mwenezi, or ZEC is playing to the tune of, again, ZANU-PF?
Thank you very much for your question, sir. We have another one in the front here.
Thank you very much. My name is Davis Jr. I'm the NERA Information Director. I'm also Policy and Strategy for Progressive Democrats of Zimbabwe, led by Barbara Nyagom. My concern is to all the panelists. We are talking of a scenario of ZEC supposed to be implementing reforms. What
Supposed
if they
to
are
be
not
implementing?
reforms, electoral reforms?
Sorry.
What if they are not going to implement them? What is going to happen? Are we boycotting the election in 2018 or not?
I think that question was answered. Have you come late? That question was addressed. It
Well-
was. Thank you. It's okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
fine.
you.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks.
Another concern is how then do we proceed into an election which we have since acknowledged is being rigged? Isn't it legitimizing the illegitimate? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have one more, Charmaine, or was that it for that round? That was it? All right. Over to our panel. There's some questions there. So those I would like to address, please do. We can start with you there, Mr. Mashorio.
Thank you. The reason why we say that ZEC is a captured institution, the reason why we say ZEC, in whatever they're doing at the moment, they are preparing to rig for 2018, does not in any way meant to discourage the people to participate in the next election. What we are doing at the moment, and the reason we have to speak it 12 months before the elections, we are going to do everything possible to make sure that we check the ZEC system and the ZANU-PF system. We are not just going to wait until the 2018 elections. There are going to be various activities, various initiatives to make sure that one way or the other, we will force ZEC back to the right place. The problem with the ZEC, the question is not about the constitution as it is in terms of why we have Rita Makarau there, whether it's, the constitution is actually clear. It's good in the sense that the commissioners are actually, their interviews that are done by the Parliamentary Standing Committee, and then there's a process which also involves the president then ending up appointing. The major problem with the ZEC is not only the commissioners, it's actually the secretariat. You know, we are talking about wanting to start the voters' roll anew. if you, the first thing that we wanted to do was to start ZEC anew. You have new employees, because currently the people that are there, like President Mangoma spoke about, all of them, they have got links to the military or to the intelligence, to the extent that we believe that when Rita Makarau stands up there, she is already compromised. Even if she had a mind of her own, she is forced into a box. And it's even worse, given that she wants to be Chief Justice.
Thank you. I just want to come in there. You know, there seems to be a lot of technicalities, as I did say, and you've just touched on the fact that there needs to be a whole new ZEC, as well as a whole new voters' roll, as well as a whole new, you know, it needs electoral reforms. I worry about this, as I said, 12 months before an election. Should our focus not at this stage be about raising awareness on how this process is going to happen and encouraging people to go and vote so that the numbers increase from 5.9 million voters to at least 10 million voters, because those Zimbabweans live here? I'm worrying about this. It's actually disconcerting that we're still focusing on, you know, renewing things that we in reality know are probably not possible overnight when elections are next year. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think that gentleman raised an important point about incentivizing voters.
Yes.
I think as political parties, what we need to do when we talk about BVR, when the registration starts, we have to have our own people monitoring the registration exercise. And we are, as NPP, we are currently working with our technical partners to train about 20,000 of our agents who will be monitoring the voter registration, who will be at the points where the voter registration will be taking place. And we know that these will be polling stations. And we know that ZEC is going to do voter registration in one constituency for about 15 days. So we have that information, and we are training our people that when the exercise starts, our people will be there to monitor the process, to see that the role that is being created, it's a fresh role. When they start, there is no name on the list.
Sorry, sir, but doing that, you're creating people, you're sending people to monitor the registration process, but the people are not going to go and register in the first place.
We are also telling
the issue of the public that is so, there's so much voter apathy that they don't care.
I think as political parties, we have been
vote.
doing quite a lot of work. You have been seeing presidents moving around, my president, the president of the MDC,
so you believe
going to the
work is
people
sufficient?
and telling them that we are going to have a new voter registration exercise that is going to kickstart. We were told it was going to start in May. So that information has been conveyed to our supporters, and our supporters are waiting. And that's why we're saying what we were doing now was to empower our party agents so that they monitor that exercise, so that we see that really we are starting with a blank slate. When the registration process opens, there won't be any names on the list. So that process has to be monitored as well. I think that builds confidence in voters. And we have also talked about coalition. The coalition that we are building is also another process that we are using to incentivize people to vote, because we are giving them confidence that we are not going as fragmented political parties, but we are going to field one presidential candidate, and we are going to increase our chances to win the next election. So that is incentive enough that we are giving to voters. Prior to that, political parties...
You're deciding that that's incentive enough.
Yeah, it's an incentive, yes, it's an incentive, and our people are really amenable to that, and they have been commenting us. We have been receiving very, very positive comments about what we are doing. So that is what political parties are doing. The demonstrations that we are doing as well, we are trying to do what is within our means to ensure that we push for any positive thing that we can get out of this rock called ZANU-PF. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Mangoma.
I think you point out that the things that need to be done are too many, and there isn't enough time. And this is why we are advocating for the use of the ID cards, which are already biometric. And that way...
For registration?
Yeah, no, not for registration, for voting.
But as no rambo eso. As no rambo.
Yeah. So what we are saying is that we want, because whichever way you are going to look at it, you are going to go through this process. and find out that it is a dog's breakfast, you'll end up now having to say, now that we are going to vote using our IDs, what system and what checks and balances must we have? What we are advocating for is we must start preparing for that now, because absolutely the system that is there is going to be incapable of delivering a voter's roll that is going to satisfy even a kindergarten school, kid. Now, we come and talk about the incentives. We as Coalition of Democrats have already agreed that we are going to have the things that Zimbabweans want, have a dialogue with society, so that we come up with a document and issues of the Zimbabwe we want, to take ourselves away from a power matrix that Zimbabwe has been thrown in by ZANU-PF into a service and servant culture where leaders are there to serve the electorate and the general populace of Zimbabwe. And this becomes important that the voters and the generality of Zimbabweans will know what to expect when the Coalition of Democrats, or CODE, gets into power. Because it's something that says, simply vote me in and then you will see what you will do. We are saying, for this time, for 2018, it's not sufficient for political parties to tell the electorate what they are going to deliver. There must be dialogue between the electorate and the political parties and come up with a framework that will be followed. And that makes sure that the electorate and the politicians, and particularly CODE, are going into the election as one.
So that's one of your strategies, to almost co-write your manifestos with the electorate.
That's correct.
There are a few things that I think I must just deal with. Number one, the fact that the government will intimidate people or will misinform people is not a good reason for rejecting a new voter registration system. Yeah, the fact that the government will intimidate people or misinform people is not a good enough reason to reject the system. The government has been intimidating people. It has been misinforming people, even about the current voter registration program. It will intimidate about others as well. Then number two, is Justice Makarau conflicted or not? Justice Makarau is conflicted. She is a former MP appointed by Robert Mugabe, a former ZANU-PF MP. That's number one. Number two, she is sitting on the Judicial Service Commission, and she is a judge of the Electoral Court. An electoral court that will be, that can decide matters that are brought against her. So she is conflicted. Then lastly, why should we go and register to vote when there is so much skepticism? I hear you, Davis, I think it was. No, it was Dominic. But Dominic, what we are saying is that let's see the red lights. Let's fight this system, because this system wants to steal our votes. We must register in our numbers. We must fight the system. Then lastly, if we remove ZEC, then what? Yesterday, the political parties who were in the demonstration made a resolution and a petition. The resolution is that ZEC has failed the test as an election management body. It has failed the test of impartiality and independence. And therefore, we must have a SADC or UN or AU supervised election management body, an international election management body, to run the affairs of Zimbabwe election-wise. This is not the first time. In 1980, the elections were not run by the government of Ian Smith. They were not run in terms of the constitution of Zimbabwe Rhodesia. We can have elections run by the United Nations. By the way, the United Nations, SADC, AU, do not compromise our independence, because Zimbabwe is a voluntary member of those groupings, and it is then bound by the activities of those groups.
Mr. Manzora, to touch on 2 points that you referred to. First, you said that because Justice Makarau is a former ZANU-PF member, that her position is compromised. And I look at this panel, and all of you have agreed that there is a coalition underway. is it that you're saying that politically someone is who they're originally from? Which is why it's so easy for most of you to still form one party because you never really separated in the first place.
That's why I said if it quacks like a duck, swims like a duck,
So you
and
are
flies
all-
like a duck, then it is a duck.
Right.
Justice Makarau has made favorable decisions in favor of ZANU-PF. She did not see any evil. She did not speak any evil when ZANU-PF was breaking all the electoral rules in the past by-elections.
All right,
Now,
I
she
just
is a
want to-
judge.
sorry,
And
Honorable.
as a judge,
Sorry,
she
sir.
should have been fair and should have condemned those acts.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I understand your point now. And I would like to just ask the panel, I think many of you have made your points very clear about how you feel about Justice Makarau. But in her absence, where she can't defend herself, these are cheap shots. So I think maybe if we can continue to focus on the body as ZEC and maybe talk about elections and not attack individuals that are not here to defend themselves. Because it
Their
doesn't make
official
sense.
capacity.
Yeah, in her official capacity. There's some comments that came in around what you are going to do collectively to counter these intimidation tactics that you all speak of. What are you actively doing? What you've just done, Mr. Monzora, as you mentioned them again. You said there's going to be intimidation. How do you validate that? And what are the parties doing collectively to counter this intimidation, if it is a factor?
I think what we need to do is, what we need to understand as Zimbabweans is that we have to rescue ourselves from the problems that we are having. And that fear is one of the issues that has bedeviled our elections. We need to come up with systems that protect the vote. We need to come up with the system that protects the polling station. We need to have people, we need to have election agents, we need to monitor, we need to expose what is happening through social media, we need to report, and we need to have an international election management system that monitors, if it doesn't monitor the management of the election itself, but monitors the activities around the conduct of the elections. What we need is to have a way that impunity, because one of the gripes we have with Rita Makarau in her official capacity, not personal capacity, is that she also is in charge of the judges that will judge the election under her role as the in the Judicial Service Commission. So how are these judges who are going to be supervised by the chairman of ZEC going to be able to be independent in terms of elections violations? President Mangoma talked about the media. There are more election violations. And when we talk about elections, we are talking about death. There are many families and people who are in here who have lost loved ones simply because they are elections. And that we need to have stopped.
Thank you. Is it a fact? Okay, we're going to come to our audience first. We have a couple more hands. We'll take those, and those will be our last hands for the session because we're going to have to wrap up soon. We have gone over an hour as anticipated. So, Charmaine, can you please show me the hands that are going to be speaking, and then we can take those. That's 4 hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Already got the microphone. Yeah. So 5, please, only. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Pauline Nyamondera. My question I'm addressing to the 5 political leaders who are in front of us. Do you all agree with the BVR? That's my question first.
I think you could just nod or maybe a show of hands on the panel. Sorry, for the purpose of progress. Do you agree with it? Or if you do agree with it, please just raise your hands. There can't be a but. You
Now
agree
that's
with
a
it or you
problem.
don't?
And you are saying you want to fight this. Like, already, you are trying to look for a way out. But I don't know. Understand my concern.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's take our other question. We're going to go through all of them, and then we'll give the opportunity to all our panelists to give their answer in their conclusion. We're going to go around the panel. So please just note the questions to all of you, and then this will be our closing. In your closing remarks, you'll answer the questions you wish to address, if that's okay. Next question.
Thank you. At first, my name is Marvelous. At first, when I came in here, I thought that ZANU-PF was not represented. But I think Ruveneko, you have proved to have done enough of consultancy work. You have proved to have done a lot of consultants work for ZANU-PF, and wonder why it is not part of the panel.
Is that a question or a jibe?
It's not a question, but just an introductory remark. In terms of my question now, I just want to find out from the panelists that we seem to have repeated the same thing over and over again while we are producing the same result of failing. What is it that we are going to do differently this time around? Thank you.
Thank you for your introductory remark and your question.
Thank you very much. I'm not happy. My name is Moses Chamanga from NPP. I'm not going to ask a question, but it's just a statement that I'm going to make. I'm not happy with these guys. We've got the best brains in the opposition political party. If you see ZANU-PF introducing something, it means this thing of BRV, BVR, they've already finished with us already. We are nagging behind. So I want to say to these guys from political parties, please, as of now, don't think we are going to tell you what to do. Don't think we are going to tell you what to do. You are lying here that you are going to consult people, you are going to ask the people what they want. But you will never come to us. You will never come to, and this thing of coalition, please swallow your pride. Just go and join the people, then you want to fight Mugabe. Why do you want to complicate things? Why do you want to complicate things? We want a grand coalition. And this, let me be very clear with you. We don't want you to think. I know Mr. Mafume, he has been in the board of SST. I'm also a beneficiary there. I respect him. But I'm saying, Ruveneko, these people must not think. They must listen to what the people of Zimbabwe want. Because we have suffered for a long time. Comrade Monzora is a qualified lawyer. He's a qualified lawyer. But what are they doing? They take people for granted. They do boardroom politics. They don't come to the people. We are suffering. It's 36 years down the line. And what are they doing? They just assume that you are going to vote for them. No, it's not easy. They are not going to get it so easy. We are saying they must come to the people. If you see ZANU-PF agreeing to something, they have already finished with that. We are nagging behind. They have moved forward. So we are saying, please come to the people and hear what the people want.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that passionate comment. I think I've heard this in various conversations where people say we need to stop focusing on this anything but ZANU mentality. And that, I think, speaks to what he's just said, that it's not that easy to get a vote from, yeah. All right, another question there.
Yes, I think my question or my contribution is two-way. I think my first comment is to my colleague professionally, Mr. Mangoma. I think discrediting the biometric system and throwing away everything could not be right as well, because the ID systems which we are actually complaining about were actually the model which was used to rig the previous election, if you may actually use the word rig, because IDs can just be produced, but biometric data cannot be produced. So once somebody has actually registered maybe once, we now know how many people are on the voters roll, because we can't recreate fingerprints, we can't recreate faces, we can't recreate irises. So we know exactly that in terms of flesh and blood, we've got 5 million people, and that can be verified. Then after the election, we can know exactly how many people are possible to vote, and statistically we can maybe argue. But with ID cards, they can just be run. It's just a printer, and they can just go and people will vote. And then my other question is, we are sitting here talking about 12 months, but we don't have a coalition. My colleague also talked about a process of actually creating their own manifesto. At this time, I think you should be actually having a manifesto. Not a coalition, a manifesto of the coalition, and talking about as one body. Because if he's going to do a manifesto, my homie, Mr. Monzora, is going to do another manifesto. We are going to argue again on actually agreeing the two documents. That's 6 months lost. So by now we should be having a document as a coalition which is being sold to people. And I think this is where maybe you actually lose it, because NPF is in unison. They're just going, it's one party. They might fight, but they've got only one document. So I think that is my contribution to the discussion.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. And do we have one more, or was that it? We're good? Was that 5? Okay, great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to come to our panelists, and as I said, these are now your closing remarks. So after this, you will not be able to speak again. So please address the questions you wish to address, and then we can sum up our conversation this evening. So maybe we'll go the opposite way this time. All right, we'll start with you, please, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the sentiments about coalition. In the MDC, we think that is the best thing to happen. And we actually said that as a resolution of our Congress. And we have acted not as a big brother as we used to do sometimes, but we have acted and treated other political parties very, very much equally. So the MDC is prepared for a coalition. The second thing is that what are we doing differently? That's marvelous. Marvelous, this is the first time that the opposition in Zimbabwe is thinking of a coalition so much before the election. It has never happened before. And this is the first time that the Zimbabwean political leaders are learning to not to build little political fiefdoms, but to come together. So it's a coagulating phase, and that is very, very positive. Mr. Chimanga, yes, thank you very much for the criticism that we do boardroom politics. Yes, sometimes we do that, and that is not right, and we are going to correct that. But just to say, yesterday we were not in the boardroom. Then ZANU-PF is not fragmented. That can't be true. ZANU-PF is the most fragmented political organism on this part of the earth right now. And we are quite happy as the MDC that we are going to be working with others. Now let me just end up by saying that people are asking, what are you going to do in order to fight this? What are you going to do in order to fight that? And I want to end up by quoting Lenin, Vladimir Lenin. He says in his article, Guerrilla Warfare, there is no prescribed method of struggle. Every method will depend on the circumstances that exist at that time. We are going to defeat this system. We are going to have electoral reform. We are going to defeat ZANU-PF. How we are going to do it will depend on the circumstances that exist at that time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This G quoted Lenin, so let me quote the other Chinese revolutionary Mao Zedong. You know, he said brothers fighting at home should unite to face a common enemy. And I think one of the things that is crucial and very important this year is that all opposition political parties in Zimbabwe are speaking one language. And I think it's the general view of the people of this country that we need to unite, because we cannot continue to have another 5 years of ZANU-PF ruining this country as they are doing. So in our view, the coming together of opposition political parties is a new phenomenon which is going to be very helpful. The second part, it is the general agreement among the opposition political parties to say we need an internationally supervised election. We need the UN, we need AU, we need SADC to come and help us. And this is a cause that we are going to fight for. And we believe that once we have got an internationally supervised election, it will motivate the people. They will come in numbers and ZANU-PF will be defeated. And I remain optimistic that in as much as there were reigns in 1978 and 79 that ushered ZANU-PF, I believe the reigns that we have seen now is going to usher a new system, and ZANU-PF will be gone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I can understand the emotions that Zimbabweans have, but I'm glad that at least as NPP, we have Mr. Chamanga Moses, we managed to go out and attract him to our party, and certainly we didn't do that from the boardroom. We have no boardroom, in fact. We don't have offices that we are using as we speak now, but we've attracted quite a lot of people.
Are you soliciting for sponsorship?
I'm answering a question. I'm glad that the sentiments for a coalition are coming from the people. And what we are doing as politicians is to listen to what the people have been doing. And what we did yesterday, like I said, was not the first thing, it was not the first time. We showed Zimbabwe that we can work together in Gweru. We had a joint march when we were still known as ZimPF. We had a joint march and we had a joint rally with the MDCT in Gweru. And it was a big statement that we were making. And also as NPP, we made a very big statement by flashing out malcontents who were trying to stall the coalition negotiations that we're having. And that was a big decision. And we had to do away with some people now that are now withdrawing from elections that they joined, despite the wise counsel that we're giving. So we are very serious about the coalition, and the decision that we made to flash out malcontents shows our seriousness.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mazora, before I move on, I just curiously, no more boycotting then from the MDCT?
Well, if you want a direct answer, it's a premature question. As I said, the MDC is working right now, concentrating on delivering electoral reforms. And MDC will make its decision known. But what the MDC is doing is it is preparing for elections.
Yeah.
They've made a
Are you convinced by that answer? I don't know. It just I'm emphasizing the need for a simple answer because we have watched you stand in the terraces and in a way that has been perceived as though you're chickening out and you're boycotting. So, you know.
Rufe.
Am I being?
No. I think.
Oh, I'm being that other party.
I think there could be.
That's a genuine question. Do you not care to vote for the MDCT? Do you not want to know if they're participating? You don't.
Okay.
So, Mr. Wanzona, it's okay.
Let me try to answer that. Let me do justice to the question because there may be more people asking that question.
Maybe not.
The issue is the MDC going to get in or not? And underlying that question is the belief that electoral reforms are not coming. Now, we cannot prejudge that. And it is also a belief that the opposition will not win in its fight to have a SADC, AU, or UN supervised election management board. So those are big ifs.
Sure.
So it is too early to say whether these conditions will be right or not. But what the MDC is doing is that parallel to fighting for electoral reforms, it is preparing for election. And what I can promise is that the MDC with its partners is going to score the highest electoral victory ever witnessed in Zimbabwe come 2018.
All right. Thank you, sir. Coming more to our closings, Mr. Mafume.
Thank you very much. It's a difficult task to ask me not to think. My livelihood depends on thinking on a day-to-day basis. But we will try to not think at some point. But I think we have had... Well, it's a hard fight not to think. But here we go. We are going to listen to the people, and we have listened. The issue of the coalition, that is why you saw Tendai Biti, who is the president of our party, People's Democratic Party, in the same car with Morgan Changirai, and the pictures are out for all to see. And in that same car were a number of other political leaders as well. So we are there. We are trying to move together in a certain direction, and we do believe that we are nearer than further when we were before. BVR, let me explain. I think the SG tried to explain. BVR was not a ZANU-PF idea. And that's where people get it wrong. Sometimes ZANU-PF is very quick to appropriate things. Or when you see them being repeated by certain people, you think that they brought it. BVR, if you look at the documents of the MDC, if you look at the statements, if you Google the statements that we were doing when we were formed as a party or as a collective opposition, and if you look at the work of ERC that we are having here, BVR is a progressive election system. It's not an election swear word. Okay? It's a progressive election system. The system can be abused, granted. But believe you me, any person in ZANU-PF or in the ruling party who is going to champion BVR and who has championed BVR, you will see what will happen to them in the next few weeks. Not next year, in the next few weeks. That's why the Herald has started turning on BVR and calling it a treasonous idea. And the treasonous people are going to be flushed out because BVR is a progressive election system, but it can be abused. But we need it to be able to audit the election. You cannot have an election that is not auditable. So we have not put too much thought about it. Believe you me, we will need it. And in conclusion, comrades and friends, I will quote myself. We are going to win. We are going to defeat ZANU-PF.
Is this the coalition being
That
weak?
is the coalition.
Right.
The coalition is going to win. Their coalition is going to defeat ZANU-PF. We are going to make Zimbabwe a better place for everyone. We are going to make Zimbabwe a place where you would want your children to grow in. ZANU-PF is a tired party with tired people. The whole cabinet looks like an old people's home. They should be moving with oxygen masks. Except for Rufus' father. But the rest of them are proper candidates for an old people's home. So the old can never defeat the young. It is, history is on our side and victory is certain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nasi Muneni Nai. I'll take it.
Thank you, except myself. I won't comment about you.
You just did.
The issue that we are facing is exactly doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. We have clearly shown that ZANU and ZEC are one, and ZANU and ZEC will act in unison to use and abuse a system of a voters' roll. So as long as ZANU is there and ZEC is there, any voters' roll, whether EVR, whether the one we have already said no to, or BVR, will be grossly abused in favor of ZANU-PF. Ladies and gentlemen, you must accept that. To actually think that you can go into a voters' roll where ZAN is controlling things and be able to come up with it being acceptable, that you must be dreaming. And therefore, really, as long as we are not going to have a different referee for these elections, you are wasting your time by having a voters' roll, any voters' roll. So, please, the issue of a BVR or a voters' roll with ZANU in charge is a waste of time. Whereas now, and my colleague there says that the last election was stolen because of use of IDs. No, that's not correct. When ZANU-PF has got the voters' roll, it is capable of now analyzing exactly who is strong where and what manipulation needs to be done. Whereas when you are going munu nechitupa chake, nobody knows where anyone is going to vote. Now, the one major advantage of munu nechitupa chake is, as I said earlier in my opening remarks, the greatest rigging tool used by ZANU-PF is violence. So when someone is displaced through violence and you are in a voter's roll, you have lost your vote. Whereas if it's munu nechitupa chake, if you are displaced from Mtoko and you go to Murewa or to Harare, you carry your vote with yourself. And therefore, the dividend for using violence and for being violent is greatly reduced. And that is the way we can have a peaceful election. So this thing of trying, our problem is not a technological problem. Our problem is being caused by a ZANU-PF which is bent on winning at any cost. And therefore, for people who understand systems, it is extremely easy to be able to see who has voted and who has not voted, as long as, because the surest way is not a voter's roll. It's not your eyes, it's not your thumb, it's the mark that you carry. As long as there is a visible mark, that is not washable. And this is why we say ZEC itself is captured, because if it allowed all of us to be very sure of only one thing, that the ink is not washable, the ink is authentic, then double voting is completely taken out. And therefore, let's dissuade ourselves from thinking that having technology is going to be the panacea. You go back to Uganda, the elections, they were already saying Museveni is going to win because they were using a BVR system. They already knew the results. Whereas when it's munu nechitupa, you don't know where anyone is going to vote. And I saw someone talking about a diaspora. A person doesn't have to come here to register. They will come here on voting day and still be able to vote. Our constitution is clear about our rights. And let's not fool ourselves to think that technology and sounding that because we have demanded this from one day to another, that now it is coming, that it is the appropriate time for it. This is clearly, 2018 is not the appropriate time for BVI. Mark my words, we'll be sitting and saying, and we should stop it from today to say BVR, yes, it could be a good system, but not under ZANU-PF and not in 2018.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was about to ask you who you were going to quote, but you just did when you said, stop it. So now I'd like to, I see that we have a lot of interest during this discussion, and as I said, people that are not here, right? From Justice Makarau, from ZANU-PF. Now we're going to play a clip from Justice Makarau, right? This is not about this discussion, but it was prior to this discussion. And it hopefully sums up our conversation and the understanding of what BVR is. Because I think what's important to take home today as citizens is, yes, see press for details regarding where we're going to register, how it's going to happen. But listen to this and understand and take away that for today so you know what is what. Do more research on it. It's a fact that BVR is expensive. The budget is huge. I don't know if it's entirely true that we can't raise those funds. Yes, there have been talks of engaging the UN to assist in that. We know these things are happening, and it's a process. And I feel it started too late. That is my personal opinion. But it doesn't matter. The point is 2018, we've got to witness an election, and it's got to happen. And we've all got to participate. So here is Justice Rita Makarau giving us a comment on the BVR system. So if you could just take it away for us.
The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, ZEC, says it will not use e-voting but will use biometric voter registration for next year's harmonized elections. ZEC chairperson Justice Rita Makarau said the biometric kits being acquired by government will only be used to capture the usual identity details plus the fingerprints in order to improve the credibility of the voters' roll and avoid disputed election results.
2018 tinoda kuti vanhu vedu vavhote mavhotero avagara vachingoita kubva 1980 ekuti vanopinda muboth neballot paper ravo vomaka ivo vega nekuisa x pacandidate yavanoda hatisati taakuti endai munoisa x pamushini. Hongu kune nyika zhinji dzakaedza kuita electronic voting iyo yauri kutaura, asi nyika idzodzo dzine zvadzakasangana nadzo zvatiri kuongorora kuona kuti isu kana taakuzoti muzimbabwe ngativhotei tichishandisa magetsi nekushandisa mishini, zvinhu izvozvo zvinenge zvagadziriswa sei. Tinoda kushandisa yatinoti iyo biometric voter registration. Biometric voter registration inoreva kuti pamusoro peizvo zvatagara tichingotora kare zvokuti tipeiwo zita renyu, tipeiwo nhamba dzenyu dzechitupa, tipeiwo pamunogara, taakuchizokumbira vavhoti vedu vese kuti pamusoro peizvozvo zvamatipa tipeiwo mafingerprints enyu, tipeiwozve tibvumidzeiwo titore mufananidzo wenyu digitally. Izvi zvinozotibatsira isisu kana takumahofisi kwedu takutoona kuti vanhu vanyoresa ava ndiye munhu mumwe chete here ambonyoresa achishandisa rimwe zita kana kuti achishanda email address, nekuti mafingerprints haachinji, digital picture haichinji, mazita anogona kuchinja, address anogona kuchinja, asi mufananidzo wako ukanga watorwa digitally nemafingerprints ako atorwa hazvichinji. Saka zvinobatsira kuti voters roll rinenge rine vanhu vashoma vakanzokurura kuoreswa.
The tobacco marketing season officially kicked off this week with farmers delivering their crop at the
All right, I hope that was audible. If not, you can always get it online and we can continue just to learn more about this. As a citizen, as a young citizen, I'm excited to be incentivized more and more about voting and participating as we go into this election period. And I also hope that the coalition agrees on more things, especially on the BVR implementation, because this panel was divided on that decision, which is okay for today. We can't finish everything in one day. He did touch briefly on the diaspora vote. The comments were coming on Facebook. How can we participate? And it's very true, and it's a very, very sensitive area. But as I said, we can't discuss everything in one sitting. So hopefully that'll be for another discussion. Maybe ERC can bring us more engagement there. So just out of interest, those in this room today, yes, your vote is your secret. But how many of you are going to vote, from a show of hands, in 2018? I think that deserves a round of applause. All right, thank you very, very much. Thank you again to our panelists, and thank you all for joining us this evening. And thank you to the team. That's it from us on Ruveneko Live, and of course brought to you by the Election Resource Center. I don't doubt there will be many, many more of these productions as we go along. So good night for now, be good, and if you can't be good, be safe.